Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to the Ironbark Podcast, and I am your host, Epion. Today is a more somber episode. Uh, the nature and wildlife, particularly the wildlife community, has lost a content creator. Uh, for those of you who aren't aware, you probably are if you listen to this podcast, though I haven't spoken of her before, but if your interests are in wildlife, I'm sure this has been in your feed or in your algorithm. Content creator Mikayla Raines, uh, she had this Save a Fox foundation, or founder of Save a Fox, and it was this organization. It's like a wildlife sanctuary where she saved foxes. Um, Online, I was reading she saved upwards of 5,000 foxes throughout her life. Um, Mikayla passed away due to what was being reported as online bullying and harassment. It's very sad. It's incredibly sad, but you see it quite often with people who focus on like wildlife rescues or uh, you know like wildlife sanctuaries, that type of stuff. And it's very strange. The smaller degrees, I've sort of experienced similar things. It's sort of like this like hyper vigilant, critical like types of people who hone in and focus on you. And when I don't know, it's almost like when they see that it's like good natured, good spirited, they want to like nitpick or fuss about certain aspects of it that could be um, somehow articulated as being bad or misguided or harmful, even. And they kind of look for anything and they'll just twist stuff. It's or they'll make mountains out of molehills, type of stuff like that. Um, it can be brutal, and I don't know why this type of targeting exists. There's ways if you have like a problem with like a nature or wildlife content creator, there's ways to like speak to them or talk to them without being malicious. So if you actually do have a concern, you could voice it and come to like probably an agreeable resolution where all parties are happy. At least that's what I like to believe. But other times I don't think it's really about rectifying a criticism or issue. I think it's more or less just trying to yuck somebody else's yum. Just trying to, take away a little bit of their stardom, their appeal, what people like trying to, I don't know, demonize good natured or good intended people. And in some instances, like, you know, the road to hell can be paved with bricks of good intentions. But I don't know. I think sometimes it's just done out of malicious intent. It's not really done out of care or concern of other things of nature. It's sad. It's fucking terrible, actually. I'm just gonna, like, I don't know. Like, I don't know why people do that. I don't. And it seems like they're all on the same team. If we're all concerned about wildlife and rescuing animals, conserving them, why are we harassing each other? Like, why are we being mean to each other? We're on the same team. We need to be working together. We need to be coming together, sharing ideas, supporting each other, educating each other, creating plans, advocating for each other, and if we're misguided or flawed in some of our ways, correcting each other in a positive and, good way. That's the way to go about things if there's an issue, not name calling or harassment or, you know. And it can be rough. It can be rough. It can make you really want to like run away from social media, but when it's your entire life, you can't really, right? You're sort of indentured to the content creation. You need to make content in order to make money, to continue to support your causes and your foundations and all that stuff. So it can be rough. You're really married to the game. You know, from what I was reading, Mikayla was a mother. So there's some babies without their mom now. It's very sad. Um, a lot of foxes. It's a shame. Maybe we should just have a little bit of a moment of silence here. Just a few seconds. To remember Mikayla and to sort of honor her like selflessness. Okay. Yeah. It, now, with that being said, I also don't believe two wrongs make a right. So there are going to be some people that are very angry at the people who harassed her or bullied her. And I understand that. But to turn around and become what you dislike or hate or mad at and then do it to somebody else, the eye for an eye thing, I don't believe is the right approach. Don't become what you hate. Become better than that. If there's any kind of legal fallout, let the system take care of it. Let the authorities do what they work. Let them do their work. If you can provide evidence or helpfulness to the official authorities and people who might be looking into this, that could be seen as helpful. But online harassment, doxing, threats, violence, never going to condone that. Rise above. She wasn't like that, Mikayla. So I don't think she'd want everyone to stoop to the levels of the people who treated her poorly. I think that's fair to say. Maybe, I don't know, donations to her foundation. That's a lot of foxes without their mom. They may need continued support. It's a tragedy. It really is. It's a big loss. These wildlife content creators, they get flack. I'm a smaller one to some degree, right? And they get flack, especially once you start diving into the animal rescue, wildlife sanctuary place, and you'll see a lot of these places. They're very apprehensive about videos, photography, this sort of stuff, because some things can be misconstrued or misunderstood. So sometimes you'll have an animal in a small enclosure, a small pen, and people will say, that's cruel, it shouldn't be like that. And then that can get a whole bunch of people going. But what they don't realize is, that animal actually has a broken leg or broken foot, something like that. And it needs to heal. So it's bandaged and casted, and we don't want it having a large, enclosure, because it'll walk around more. It'll continue to harm its leg instead of being rested. And some animals are naturally denning, and they want to feel enclosed and safe because it's kind of like, okay, no predators are going to get me here type of thing. So it keeps their anxiety down low. There's a lot of explanations for things that can look a certain way. And then you have people like Tiger King is probably the easiest example, or private collectors out there that don't necessarily provide the best lives for their animals. And it starts to teeter into a realm of abuse. And I feel like a lot of people sometimes, when you run out of dragons to slay, when you run out of monsters and you want to feel virtuous and like this like person of higher ground, higher morale, higher morals, and maybe you've had a few victories in the past of pointing out wrongdoers, and you really like that feeling. But now all the dragons have been slayed. So what do? Well, you start inventing monsters. You start pointing fingers that don't need to be pointed at people. You slay. You end up like a boy with a toy sword in the middle of a field, fighting imaginary creatures and dragons of your own imagination. And it's because people desperately want to feel that morality, that virtue, that it's, what would you even call that? Like toxic morality? It reminds me of those stories you read online about firefighters. There's like some stories on there. I'm sure you can Google it. They'd exist. Firefighters that would start infernos so that they could respond to it and be a hero that put it out. It's quite bizarre. They want this like glory and valor, so they create their own scenarios. It actually makes them a villain. The world's full of all different types of people. It truly is. It's sad, man. There's very few people willing to dedicate their lives and ambitions, their finances, to helping animals. There's very few. You could probably find, you name an industry, and you could probably find more of whatever that is. So if you wanted to say like hobby shops, like card Magic the Gathering Pokemon stores, if you wanted to say tattoo shops, if you wanted to say like outdoor recreation stores, bike shops, you probably Google that, like places in my area. There'll probably be like far more of anything you can think of like that than there would be wildlife sanctuaries or rescues. And these kind of places usually depend entirely on volunteers, donations. It's a tough stride. It's a tough gig. But people do it because they love animals. And a lot of times people do it because humans haven't been so kind to them. People have experienced traumas and tragedies surrounding people that they love or trust, or sometimes just people they didn't even know at all. And they carry that with them. So what they do is they confide in something that they view as being, I don't know, innocent, maybe not harmless, but they understanding the nature of animals is far easier than understanding the nature of human beings. A fox will always behave as a fox. It will sometimes nip you. It will sometimes, maybe scratch you by accident when it's excited. But you don't hold that against the fox, because that fox is just being a fox. When it comes to people, we hold them to a much higher standard. Sometimes we hold people to the same standard we hold ourselves. And what I mean by that is we have sort of like character or, values or beliefs where we believe we will never do something to somebody. It's like, I would never steal from somebody. I would never rip somebody off. I would never, there's people, whatever the case might be, there's certain things you just wouldn't do to a person. And then those people will have those things done to them. And they have a really hard time comprehending that, because how they view humans is kind of like how they view themselves. And when it goes outside of that bubble or realm of understanding, it can kind of mess with your head a bit. For some people, right? They'll be like, how can this person be so different from myself? I could never do that to somebody. How could they do that to me? I feel so betrayed. I feel so violated. I feel so wronged. maybe we should have lower expectations on people. But maybe these things happen to us at a younger age before we're able to fully form our thoughts and our brains fully developed. So we just sort of, I don't know, protect ourselves with things that can't protect themselves. So we protect them. And that's what we focus on. And that's what makes people, I don't know. Maybe that's what makes them want to go into like sanctuary stuff. And I don't know if this is true for Mikayla, but I am going to say it is very common. The other end of it is that they've never experienced anything really like that, or as like a trigger to start, loving animals or to caring for animals, but they just really love animals. They just think they're cute and fuzzy and always have since they were kids, so they just want to do more and more for that. But I don't know. I don't want to put any speculative thoughts out there, but I can imagine someone who, I don't know, maybe online bullying and harassment really affected them that much. Maybe it was like a continued, bad experiences with people. And no matter how much she tried to escape it, she couldn't. And it's sad. Fuck, it's sad. I don't know, folks. It's going to be hard to kind of pivot from this topic, but I wanted to kind of give you a bit more. But it's just food for thought. Just be kind to people online. Like everyone, like just talks to people like they're like, I don't know, like they're not real. Because I think there is so many bots and stuff online that people kind of question if it's even real anyway. Or there's so many accounts that are managed by like a PR firm or like a social media management firm that they sort of think, my things probably aren't making it across the landscape anyway, so it doesn't matter what I say. Well, sometimes it fucking does. It does a lot. I don't know. We need to be kinder, folks. We need to be kinder. Even to those that don't necessarily deserve kindness. We need to be kind to them too. Just the way she goes, bud. Just the way she goes. All right, folks. I'm going to pivot away from that now. And I know that's going to be a hard pivot. But it's a downer mood, but we have some good news. Well, depending on whatever side of the fence you're on for this, you could consider good news or bad news. Do you remember a couple podcasts ago I was talking about the BC Ostrich Farm? What is it, like Ostrich Universal Ostriches or something like that? They've been granted federal court pending review. They've given them like a stay, which basically means, I guess it gets like a review at a higher court, which means it delays the cull. I think the point that the farm is trying to make is that they have a unique immunity, which could have some sort of benefit to studying or developing some sort of vaccine or antibody to put into like other poultry or birds. Maybe they have a point. I'm not going to get into the whole diatribe I did in the last podcast. If you want to, you got to go listen to that one. So that's a little bit of an update. This will be interesting. If the ostrich farm wins, I think in these circumstances, it sort of comes down to like a judge. It's the judge's sort of like point of view, like how they view there's no way a judge's bias won't somehow impact a decision. So you have like two different types of people. You have people who are like very skeptic about viruses and their potential, and then you have people that think there's a large detriment to viruses and their potential. And wherever he falls, and now it's like a political football, and wherever that judge falls may be where they're more likely to lean. And in my experiences, but not always and not necessarily, people from like a higher earning bracket in society like people who are like kind of on the wealthier end of the spectrum tend to lean towards being more like, the viruses are bad. So like, not always, but generally speaking, that's mostly the case. And a lot of the times they are of an older generation, typically, that boomer generation, and they also tend to lean that way as well. Not always, but it does. So if I had to, now justices are very good at sort of removing their own biases and being conscious of it. So they might just have to go based purely on the facts and see how it rides, right? It'll just be like, all right, so what are they saying? The thing is, this case looks like it's going to depend heavily on sort of like a paradigm shift in the understanding of bird viruses and how we deal with them in agriculture and farming and ranching. And it's really hard to say if that's going to fly or not. And the reason I say it's going to be hard to see if it flies or not is because there's going to be X amount of portion of ranchers and stuff out there that don't want any kind of diseased animal, ranch, whatever, especially when it comes to avian stuff, because you get geese or whatever that land around them, and then the geese potentially, or whatever bird, they get it, and then they go to they land on near some other farm, and then they pass it on to, their livestock, and they lose their minds. I don't want to get all into it again. I've gone into this before. It's in the other podcast episode. It's interesting. It's very interesting to see where this will go. At the end of the day, if none of the ostriches are currently infected and they all test positive, because they've been alive now for how long, they've recovered, should they still be culled? I think there's a really good argument to say, if they can't pass anything on to anything, why should they still be culled? It's sort of like the damage has kind of come and gone, or that opportunity for damage to happen has come and gone. That boat's been missed, right? So what, you just want to do it on principle because the order was given and it was like delayed? This is where I think this like mentality and where kind of sort of like common sense, sort of like analytical thinking has to sort of come into play a bit here, and it can't just be based in principles, because it might rub a lot of people the wrong way. There might be like a public interest aspect here, because it has gotten a lot of attention, where the judge might have to look at this and be like, well, I don't know, like, they were previously infected or not now. They actually have an immunity now. The immunity has some sort of biological benefit, could be used as a vaccine in other herds of ostrich farmers, or potentially even other avian species, chickens, all that. Maybe it would be a waste. But then they could also do like some weird thing where it's like, we're going to harvest it to study it, but we're still culling them. It's an interesting thing. It's a very interesting thing. And it's, I'm getting so much into the weeds here, but it's an interesting thing because I'm pretty sure these ostriches were being farmed for food consumption. So at some point they're going to go for slaughter anyway. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that was the case. Maybe it was recreational or like some sort of like hobby farm. But could you then eat previously infected ostrich? Like, I don't know. I don't really know where this whole thing is at. I got to talk to these people. I think I got to reach out, get an interview. Yeah, because I don't know. For me, it's kind of hard to say, like, why would you kill them? Like, and after this whole ordeal, their order might be like, okay, they're not going to be slaughtered. They're not going to be culled, I mean. But they also can't be used for human consumption. So then the people who are farming and ranching them are still out money because they can't sell the meat. And then I guess the people advocating or the government, whoever it is, for the culling are kind of just like, well, the law's a law and they just follow orders basically. Where do they end up? Now they have to go to like a sanctuary, like what's, and that's still out of like the culling of them and the unable to slaughter for harvest or for meat has the same financial outcome for the ranchers. And I don't know for the farmer, and I don't know if they realize that or not. I feel like it's a very slim chance and a very slim outcome that they say, yeah, you can sell this for meat. You can sell this for human consumption. But it's gained enough ground now that maybe it's got enough crowdfunding to sort of balance the budget, though I doubt it. But who knows? Who knows? Who knows? Who knows? Who knows? I don't know. I don't know. All right, folks. I think I should talk a little bit about my weekend adventure. So, I don't know if I should publicly disclose it. We're going to say somewhere between northern Montana and southern Alberta, I saw a pretty unique animal. I saw 4 bear cubs. And when I initially saw these bear cubs, I was like, holy crap. I see a grizzly bear. And for those of you that follow my content, you've already seen the video and I do a commentary on it. But I was like, I see a grizzly bear cub, a second grizzly bear cub, a black bear cub, and a second black bear cub. And I was like, wow. I was like, that's weird to see that many bears of different like species together. So, I got into like far enough distance where I was safe. And I set up my camera and I started recording. And sure enough, Mama Bear showed up. And she was a large black bear, but she was cinnamon in color. And this is where I also think maybe black bear isn't necessarily the best description for that species of bear because they have such a wide color variety that it's not, although black is the most common, I feel like on the West Coast and especially in the mountains, we need a different name for that bear because there are so many different color variations. So I was thinking to myself, is this a black bear that's adopted grizzly bear cubs? I'm like, that would be absolutely wild. What it actually was, or was at least what it appears to me, is it was a color variation of the black bear. So you might be familiar with Kermode bears. They're like these white, I think those are grizzly bears. They might be black bears. I think they're black bears that have like white fur. And people are like, oh, is that like a polar bear? Is that like a grizzly bear? And it's like, no, it's just like a weird color. People are telling me that it's dominant. It's like a dominant recessive gene. So if they have it like in their bloodline genetics from like their parents or their grandparents, there's a good chance they'll get it. So these bears almost had like a Wolverine coloration where it's like a mixture of blonde, like a grizzly, but then had a black face, like a black bear. And it had like black legs, like a black bear as well. So it was kind of like he was like wearing like long stocking socks on his legs. He's kind of funny, cute looking, but super, he was a super distinctive one of the cubs. And I got a lot of footage of him and he's like my favorite. I have no idea if it's a boy or girl either, but I really hope maybe that that conservation's able to DNA these and get like a real answer on it. They probably just might be black bear, but I bet you there's so much like I've done a big thing on this on speciation before. There's so much admixture in different species. They're like they like apparently like every grizzly bear to some extent has small amounts of like polar bear DNA because way back and then there was like some sort of like cross section. It's interesting to think about. So it's like, I don't know how, like, where are these, why are these color variations happening? Because they're becoming more and more common. You're seeing more and more of them. You're seeing more news stories about them. it's like, is there a preference to like this coloration? Is it like tactical for like hunting and predation? Because the color scheme kind of seems similar to that of Wolverines, or maybe it's just better as a cub to remain more like blend in, and so you avoid like other, big boar grizzlies trying to each cannibalize you, take out their competition. Or is it the blonde/white just better for the snow and blending in and hunting and predation? I don't know. Nobody knows. Nobody can answer these things. Maybe it's all of those things. Who knows? But yeah, so I thought that's cool. So check out the video. Right now it is on X. I think I also have it posted on Instagram. There's some cool little pics as well. Very distinctive look, very cute. Cool to see a variety of colors of the mom and the kids all hanging out together, the cubs. Yeah. Speciation. It's really got in my head because it's like, we like to just put things in the blocks and categories, but it's like you could have black bear, a bunch of different black bears, a bunch of different colors. You could have a bunch of grizzly bears, and even grizzly bears like have some sort of variety in color from blonde to like dark brown to lighter brown. And you can have that all the way up to like polar bears. And you could probably have like this like whole spectrum of like genetic variants to like a certain degree, and like admixtures where it's kind of like you just see like this like, I don't know, like this like scale or like this spectrum of all the bears. And you're kind of like, where does a black bear start? Where does a grizzly bear start and end? Where does a polar bear start and end? And you're kind of like, it's all one species, but we're divvying up whether it's a different species or not. And that's kind of where, and it kind of muddies the water when you see like Kermode bears, and then they're like, oh, those are Kermode bears are different, or these are Kodiak grizzly bears, and people want to say those are subspecies, like this is a subspecies. And it's like what's the ultimate determiner of a subspecies? Is like, can it not breed with something else? Well, they can all interbreed. They can provide reproductive offspring. Like all those bears can reproduce together. Is it likely? No, but it can happen. And there is genetic variance in some of these bears that they study. Is it where they live? Is it how they live? Is it like genetic adaptations for hunting? I've gone into this whole thing on speciation before, and I'm probably just talking into a tunnel. But it's just like an interesting thought where we like humans like to put things into black and white, like black bear, grizzly bear, polar bear. But it's actually like much more broader than that. And like when does a subspecies actually exist? So if you have a whole population of white black bears, is that now a subspecies, or is that just a black bear that happens to be white? We're getting into the weeds a bit here. Right? Or does it have to have a specific genetic marker? Because you could find a genetic marker in any bear that's different from another bear if you really wanted to. You'd be like, oh, this one's got a DNA in it, or has the thing switched on to have slightly longer claws, or that curve a certain way differently. Oh, that's a little... It's like people. Like certain people can make like a clover shape with their tongue. That's a little genetic little thing that some people can do. Some people can wiggle their ears or, shake their eyes. Not everybody can do that, but does that mean you're a different subspecies or species? No, there's just like these little genetic quirks. So I don't know. I'm getting too much into it, but I think we have to start looking at wildlife differently. And I think maybe there needs to be better protections. Actually, I'm not going to say maybe. There needs to be better protections for the emergence of potential new subspecies. So these different colored bears and stuff like this is how it begins. This is how like a new subspecies begins to unfold and unravel. There's like a preference based on the region. It's like a geographical one where it's like this coloration helps them hunt better, helps them remain more elusive as young. It helps them, avoid whatever predation. Because this area has a particular longer snow, or the mountains create like a bigger snow patch, or it's more foggy here, so it's better, or the colors of rocks and landscape are different here, so this helps the bears this color. And I could go on and on and on and on and on and on and on, but yeah, that's my story. Speciation, check it out. It's cool. I think there's potential for that story to blow up too. It's not really getting a lot of attention online. Like, no one really. Here's the thing. Another thing about nature and wildlife content creators, nobody wants to give anybody recognition or accolades or go, oh, that's cool. If they're doing it as well, they only want to be celebrated. They don't want to celebrate. So it's hard to kind of get things out there to go viral or to get noticed when sometimes your audience neglects that little aspect. We'll see where this one goes. I've kind of pitched it as a news story. We'll see what happens, if it gets to like the normie mainstream media or not. Anyway, folks, thanks for listening to the Ironbark podcast. A bit of a somber episode. Rest well, Mikayla. Thank you for everything you did for conservation and wildlife and rescue. Good night, folks.